The Congress of Vienna, held between November 1814 and June 1815, was one of the most significant diplomatic assemblies in European history. Convened in the aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars, it sought to restore stability and order to a continent ravaged by over 2 decades of conflict. This monumental gathering reshaped the political landscape of Europe and laid the groundwork for a new international order that would endure for much of the 19th century. Background: the context of the Congress. The Napoleonic Wars, which had spanned from 1803 to 1815, profoundly disrupted the European balance of power. France, under Napoleon Bonaparte, had waged wars of conquest that led to the dissolution of old states, the redrawing of borders, and the imposition of French hegemony across much of the continent. The defeat of Napoleon's forces by the coalition powers, Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia, culminated in his abdication in 1814 and exile to the island of Elba. With Napoleon's defeat, the victorious powers were faced with the colossal task of reconstructing Europe. The Congress of Vienna was convened with the stated goal of ensuring lasting peace and stability. It sought to restore legitimate monarchies, redraw territorial boundaries, and establish mechanisms to prevent future wars. This assembly marked the first attempt at collective security and multilateral diplomacy in modern history, setting a precedent for future international conferences. The Congress of Vienna was dominated by the major powers of Europe, often referred to as the Great Powers. Each brought its interests and priorities to the negotiating table. 1. Austria. Represented by Prince Clemens von Metternich, Austria sought to restore the old monarchical order and maintain its influence in Central Europe. Metternich, a staunch conservative, became one of the most influential figures at the Congress. 2. Russia. Tsar Alexander I represented Russian interests, advocating for territorial expansion and positioning Russia as the defender of Christian Europe. 3. Prussia. Prussia sought territorial gains in Central Europe and a stronger position within the German Confederation. 4. Britain. Represented by Foreign Secretary Viscount Castlereagh, Britain prioritized maintaining a balance of power and securing its maritime dominance. 5. France. Despite its defeat, France, under the astute diplomacy of Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, managed to secure a place at the table and advocated for moderate solutions to prevent excessive punishment. Other states and representatives also participated, including smaller European nations and the Papal States, though their influence was relatively limited. Objectives and principles. The Congress of Vienna was guided by several overarching objectives and principles. 1. The balance of power. Ensuring that no single nation could dominate Europe was a central goal. By redistributing territories and strengthening key states, the delegates aimed to prevent a repeat of Napoleon's domination. 2. Legitimacy. Restoring legitimate monarchs to their thrones was considered essential to ensuring political stability. This principle sought to reverse the effects of revolutionary and Napoleonic upheaval. 3. Compensation. Victorious powers were compensated for their sacrifices during the Napoleonic Wars through territorial acquisitions. 4. Collective security. The Congress sought to establish a framework for resolving disputes through diplomacy rather than war. Major decisions and outcomes. The Congress of Vienna achieved a remarkable degree of consensus, resulting in several important decisions. 1. Redrawing borders. France was restored to its 1792 borders, losing territories gained during the Revolutionary and Napoleonic eras. The Austrian Empire regained control of northern Italy, including Lombardy and Venetia. Prussia gained significant territories, including parts of Saxony, Westphalia, and the Rhineland. Russia acquired most of the Duchy of Warsaw, modern Poland, and extended its influence westward. The United Kingdom of the Netherlands was created, uniting Belgium and the Netherlands to form a buffer state against France. The German Confederation, the Holy Roman Empire, dissolved in 1806, was replaced by the German Confederation, a loose association of 39 states under Austrian leadership. This reorganization sought to balance Prussian and Austrian influence in Central Europe. 3. Neutrality of Switzerland. Switzerland's neutrality was formally recognized, ensuring its independence and serving as a stabilizing factor in Central Europe. 4. Restoration of monarchies. Monarchs were restored in Spain, Portugal, Naples, and other states. The Bourbon dynasty was reinstated in France under Louis XIII. 5. Abolition of the slave trade. Although the abolition of slavery itself was not addressed, the Congress condemned the transatlantic slave trade and encouraged its gradual suppression. 6. Concert of Europe. The Congress laid the groundwork for the Concert of Europe, a system of regular meetings among the great powers to resolve disputes and maintain peace. This mechanism was a precursor to modern international organizations. Strengths and limitations. The Congress of Vienna succeeded in creating a stable and enduring peace in Europe. The absence of major continental wars for nearly 4 decades, from 1815 to 1853, is often attributed to its diplomatic achievements. By balancing power among the great powers and fostering cooperation, the Congress averted the kind of large-scale conflict that had characterized the Napoleonic era. However, the Congress was not without its flaws. Critics argue that it prioritized the interests of monarchies and elites over those of ordinary people. The restoration of conservative regimes often stifled liberal and nationalist movements, leading to tensions that would later erupt in the revolutions of 1848. Moreover, the redrawing of borders often ignored ethnic and cultural realities, creating new sources of conflict. Legacy. The Congress of Vienna had a profound and lasting impact on Europe and the world. 1. Diplomatic precedent. The Congress set a precedent for multilateral diplomacy and the peaceful resolution of disputes influencing later international efforts, such as the League of Nations and the United Nations. 2. Stability and peace. The system established by the Congress contributed to a relatively stable international order for much of the 19th century. 3. Nationalism and liberalism. While the Congress sought to suppress these forces, it inadvertently fueled them by ignoring the aspirations of various ethnic and cultural groups. The seeds of future movements for independence and democracy were sown during this period. 4. European integration. The emphasis on collective security and cooperation foreshadowed later efforts at European integration, including the European Union. The Congress of Vienna was a landmark event in the history of international diplomacy. By restoring a balance of power, re-establishing legitimate governments, and creating mechanisms for collective security, it achieved its primary goal of stabilizing Europe after the Napoleonic Wars. While it faced criticism for its conservative approach and failure to address popular aspirations, its achievements in fostering peace and cooperation cannot be understated. As an early example of multilateral diplomacy, the Congress of Vienna remains a subject of enduring interest and relevance. Its legacy continues to inform discussions on how to maintain international order in a complex and interconnected world.